Hello, my name is Mike Vinsel, and today I'm going to continue reading my book. We're going to finish it in just a few minutes because the last chapter we're going to start here, page 380. It's chapter 21, looking back on it now. Okay, so I just left off yesterday with this picture, and so this is a drawing or a painting, and that would be Shizuka. I'm sorry, Fusako and Stephen looking at the sunset from their porch in Japan. Okay, here we go. Okay, just a sip of coffee here. Okay, chapter 21, looking back on it now. I have made Japan my home. I never thought I would, but I have. When I was driving across America, when I was so young, as I've written, joining the military was one of the options I pondered. Which branch to join would have been a technical decision. I suppose my leanings would have been the Marines or the Army. I would have wanted to be on the ground to see with my own eyes what was going on. In my time, the early 1980s, none of the prospective American wars passed moral muster for me. Whatever I would do in my life, I did not ever want to be in the position described to me by several of the Vietnam veterans I had talked to over the years, that being to be the bad guys in the fight. In so many words, I had heard that from people I knew personally. I believe one can never fully recover from that feeling. I know I would never be able to forgive myself for having been put in that position, once warned. I had suspected at the time, and later had my suspicions confirmed, that in the case of Central America, the Americans would be on the wrong side. My suspicions were confirmed by the Iran-Contra scandal, and later the El Salvador Truth Commission, which I learned about in 1993. Those and many other sources confirmed to me that I had made the right decision, the decision not to join the military. What perplexes me now, as I consider the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, is why would anybody have joined the American military after the Iraq invasion? It is understandable that people were swept up in the war fever that arose in the wake of 9/11, but Iraq was a different story. I remember going back to New Hampshire in the summer of 2003. It was my first visit back to the States since I had moved to Japan. Jerry Pitt, a friend I had met through Russell Ford in the late 1980s, had a barbecue party in my honor at his house. John Ashland from the same crew was there, along with Russell and Russell's brother Joe. I'll write about them in future stories. Jerry had invited several of his neighbors whom I did not know. I was dismayed. Russell's brother Joe and most of the neighbors whom I didn't know solidly believed that Saddam Hussein had been behind the 9/11 attacks. They were incredulous that I didn't know that. But then again, I had been out of the country. I could be excused for not knowing. It was clear to me then that what they believed was not true, but they were so confident. The same firm belief in things that just weren't so. The first inkling of which I had detected in the young Dan Bales two years before had become pervasive. That barbecue was in May of 2003, just weeks after the Americans had invaded Iraq. Now, here in Japan, sitting by the pond, thinking en plein air, I just read today in the news that after 18 years of fighting in Afghanistan, the Americans have just signed an agreement with the Taliban that will allow the Americans to withdraw and leave the Afghan government to find a way to make peace with the Taliban or capitulate to the Taliban. How long a decent interval the Taliban has agreed to, I don't know, but I suspect there is such a timetable. Ashes to ashes. Since moving to Japan, I have made regular visits to the States during the Golden Week holidays, a series of holidays celebrated in Japan collectively as a week off in late April to early May. I land in Boston, rent a car, and drive to visit my father and Martha in New Hampshire, then visit my New Hampshire friends, and Rich and Cindy Sanderson in Vermont. In 2006, I went to trout camp in Pemmichuck, New Hampshire, with Carl Hodge, Evan Knox, and the rest of the lumberyard crew with whom I'd worked some 15 years before. That afternoon, a Friday, I had stopped at the lumberyard for cocktail hour, which they still hold, every weekday after work. Many of the regular customers would also stop by on those occasions. One of them, Brian Campbell, was there. He asked me if I remembered his son Craig from my lumberyard days. I did. Craig was just a boy, 7 or 8 years old back then. Brian told me that little Craig wasn't so little anymore. He had joined the army after high school. He was in Afghanistan with the 10th Mountain Division. Brian was proud of his son. I congratulated him. That was the polite thing to do. Today, sitting by the pond in Japan, on my day off, the sun is out, fair weather clouds drift by high in the sky, and a warm breeze is blowing from the south. The buds on the cherry trees are plump and ready to burst. Some blossoms are out already. I remember it was later that year, 2006, in June, that Evan Knox called me on the phone, long distance, late at night in Japan. He told me that Craig had been killed in Afghanistan. I looked it up in the Washington Post, Faces of the Fallen, and there he was. Small arms fire, Koren-Gel. The Aosagi is hunting among the reeds. A group of 5 cormorants has arrived, diving and rising again, frolicking like porpoises. Next weekend will be the big event. As I paint my picture, workers are stringing wires through the trees from which will hang chochin, the beautiful Japanese paper lanterns. For the next 2 weeks, the lanterns will illuminate the blossoms and the walkway. People will stroll beneath them, admiring the ephemeral magical world of the cherry blossoms. People will have picnics. Freshman company employees will stake claims for their company picnic spaces, spreading plastic tarpaulins on the grass. In appreciation for their volunteer spirit, they will be provided with food and beer by their employers, a traditional initiation rite. Fusako and I will bring our shijirin, a small charcoal-burning brazier used for outdoor cooking. That will begin in a week. The shadows grow long as I paint. The picture is how I envision the scene as it will be on Saturday night of the peak of blossom time. I will finish it later. It is time to pack up my things and go home. I walk up the hill toward my house, get home and turn on the TV. NHK News is reporting that the government is mulling its options over to how to deal with the passengers and crew from the Diamond Princess cruise ship. They say that several hundred passengers have been infected with what they are calling new type coronavirus. Fusako arrives home from work, and we go to our porch to watch the sunset. There we go. And so anyway, here is the last picture, and this is how I would envision it would be Saturday night at along the pond, And you can see the cherry blossoms there in the Chochin, all that kind of stuff. Very beautiful situation. Okay, well, that's the end of Travels with Nobody, and I hope you've enjoyed that. And okay, I'll see you next book. Okay.